Welcome to Tide 102.9, 100.9, the home of Alabama sports. I know this is the home of Alabama sports, but this video will be our SEC predictions for week 4 of the college football season. I am Marquis Munson, producer here at Tide 102.9, also joined by another producer of mine, James Hardy, one of the hardest working men in Tide 102.9, 100.9. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we're going to give you our predictions. First game of the SEC that we're going to give our prediction for is UMass going up against Tennessee, the Tennessee Vols. Now, Tennessee Vols lost after a Hail Mary play against Florida, and now they're going up against an 0-4 team in UMass. So, James, this first game of the SEC, who do you got here?
Oh, I got Tennessee all the way in this one. You're talking a UMass team that's winless in Tennessee that needs to get a good taste in their mouths before they get further into SEC play with still Georgia and Alabama and South Carolina and the rest of their SEC and LSU later in the year. I mean, this is the type of really a good opportunity for Tennessee to kind of get back on their feet.
And I'm going to go also Tennessee as well. UMass, I'm sorry, you're 0-4, so I have no faith in you. But also I think that it's a lot of problems with this Tennessee team, especially winning games late. You saw they had to go to overtime against Georgia Tech to even escape from that victory. And if it wasn't for kind of a botched play by Georgia Tech, you think that Georgia Tech would have came up with that 2-point conversion. And you also saw last week with the Hail Mary play from Florida against Tennessee as well. So I think a lot of misfortune has happened for this Tennessee Vols team, but I think they get a win here, and hopefully they can get their stride back, because they did play a lot of tough opponents to start the season, and now they got a team in UMass to where they can kind of figure out their identity. You also got a running back like John Kelly who can get a ton of yards here for this Tennessee team against UMass in this game. So I'm going with Tennessee as well. Now, another coach who is also possibly in the hot seat, Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M. He's going to go against Brett Bielema and the Arkansas Razorbacks in Arlington, Texas, home of Jerry World. Who do you got there in that neutral site game, and why?
I mean, the talk for this week has been which coach will basically survive as far as their even near-term job statuses. I think Texas A&M has more talent in this one, but the last few years, Arkansas has kind of teased us as far as being in position in the second half, in the fourth quarter, to pull out the W in Jerry World against Texas A&M and haven't been able to do it. I think Arkansas gets it done this week. I like Brandon Allen to have his best, rather, Austin Allen, the brother of Brandon Allen, to have his best game of the season. He's going to need it for Arkansas, and I think he's going to deliver and like the Razorbacks to pull out a W.
Arkansas is a 2.5 favorite, 0.5 favorite in this game, and I'm also going to go with Arkansas as well. Not just because it's kind of a home court advantage, you know, being in Jerry World being a huge Arkansas guy as well. I like Tennessee, or not, I said Tennessee. I don't like Tennessee. Arkansas, excuse me. I like Arkansas, you know, but Texas A&M is giving up a lot of points, 400 yards per game in the first 3 games of the season. I feel like Arkansas haven't developed on offense yet with Allen, but I think what they have on the defensive side of the ball, especially with Texas A&M having such a young quarterback, still trying to find his way into SEC play, I think Arkansas pulls off this victory. So Arkansas, there you go, man. Get the job done. Arkansas, one of the sleeper teams in the SEC. Another sleeper team that we're going to talk about as well is the South Carolina Gamecocks, and they will be going against Louisiana Tech in Columbia, South Carolina. So, James, who do you got in that game?
Will Muschamp's done a really nice job over in Columbia of kind of stabilizing that program after Steve Spurrier left. I think this will be a little closer game. The point spread's already pretty low for a game like this at home for South Carolina, just an 8-point favorite for the Gamecocks. But usually Vegas gets these type of, as far as when they set the point spread, usually get it in the ballpark of what the actual final margin of victory is. And I kind of like South Carolina, about that 7 to 10 point margin. I'd go with South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina, an 8-point favorite in this game against Louisiana Tech. I'm also going to go with South Carolina, sleeper team. I think Jake Bentley's going to have a good game, 766 yards so far in his passing game. Louisiana Tech give up most of their yards on the defensive side in that passing game. So look for Jake Bentley to have a good game in this game. in South Carolina, and hopefully South Carolina can progress and possibly win the SEC East, because, James, quite frankly, the SEC East doesn't look that good right now.
And it has been that way for a while, and we'll talk about it later on. It tells you how the SEC East has been really the last 5 years, when the Missouri Tigers have been to Atlanta for the SEC championship game in December 2 times in that span.
No definite winner in the SEC East. Definitely a lot of crazy teams like Kentucky and Vanderbilt really killing it in the SEC East. And speaking of the SEC East, let's go to the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 11, they're in Athens, they're at home, and they're going against that Dan Mullen and Mississippi State team. James, what you got there?
Well, I mean, like I mentioned to start out, I really like what Dan Mullen has done in Starkville with the Bulldogs program. For Mississippi State, his quarterback development. For Harris Williams, their running back that kind of came onto the scene last week with almost 150 yards rushing against LSU. And don't forget, they've got, look for Donald Gray as far as a big play wide receiver on the outside to help Nick Fitzgerald. And a key for Georgia is going to be having, keeping that eye out with the legs for Nick Fitzgerald, where almost kind of like Jalen Hurts as far as that aspect at quarterback, where Nick Fitzgerald is the strongest. And I like what Mississippi State has done so far this year, especially last week in just demolishing LSU. They've got the momentum. I like Mississippi State to pull it out.
See, this is where we're going to finally disagree on this video, because I'm actually going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. I feel like they lose these type of games every single year, and I think this needs to be the year that they win these big games. If Kirby Smart wants to progress as an SEC coach and wants to progress in the SEC East, he's got to win these games. You know, we know Mark Richt didn't win these games when he was at Georgia as well. So I think with that talent level of, you know, Nick Chubb, you know, Sonny over there, wide receiver, you know, Terry Godwin, I think that they get the job done. On the defensive side of the ball, they only allow 71 yards per game, and I think Mississippi State doesn't get that rushing attack going against this Georgia Bulldogs defense, and that's going to cause the passing game to be a little effective in this game. But I think Georgia has too much talent on this team and too much potential to not win this game, and I feel like with the SEC East being so packed with these random teams coming out of nowhere, winning these games with Kentucky and Vanderbilt, I think that Georgia needs to show that they're the dominant team in the SEC East.
It's certainly an important game for Kirby Smart. Another one of those, not quite on the national scale like the Notre Dame game was a couple of weeks ago. But, I mean, it's one of those as far as being a consistent head coach in the upper echelon of the Southeastern Conference. Is one of those that certainly Kirby Smart needs to prove that he can get his team ready to play.
Absolutely. And speaking of ready to play, after that beatdown that they got last week, Mississippi State, well, LSU is going to be going up against Syracuse this week in Baton Rouge, a 6 p.m. game. A 21.5 favorite in this game against Syracuse. James, who do you got in that game?
I do like LSU, but coming off of the humiliating loss in Starkville, it's one of those games, a non-conference game, you think that LSU should be able to win just because, hey, Syracuse, although they have a pretty decent home field advantage in the Carrier Dome, especially when Syracuse has some better football teams. But, I mean, it's still a night and day difference when you go from the Carrier Dome, even though it's indoors and can get pretty loud in there, to Tiger Stadium, which, of course, you all know out there, certainly as far as that game day atmosphere, especially under the lights, it's definitely one of the top college football environments in the country. I do like Syracuse, though, to give LSU a pretty good game, maybe for 2.5 quarters, but I mean, you look at just the overall talent differential between the two teams, and LSU should be able to pull away mid to late third quarter, and LSU get the victory probably by about 17 points.
Syracuse is really good on offense. They average 491 yards of total offense to start the season, but they haven't played an SEC defense yet this season. So I'm going to go LSU. I feel like LSU is going to bounce back from that loss against Mississippi State. Coach O needs this win, especially for job sakes, because a lot of people don't think he should be in this job, in this position at LSU. So I think he needs some of these big game scenarios. He already lost a big game last week, so I think moving forward, he needs to start winning these big games. We have Auburn, the Auburn Tigers versus the other Tigers, the Missouri Tigers. Who do you got there, James?
I tell you what, Auburn better be careful with this one. Even though Missouri certainly is in turmoil as far as the ground that Barry Odom is on, I don't think he makes it past this year. I mean, he's already fired his defensive coordinator just after 2 weeks into the season. But for Auburn, the situation down there is not much better with the dismissal of former starter and backup quarterback Sean White in a struggling offense that only, in fact, was Mercer had a chance to tie or win the ball game in the fourth quarter last week, and Mercer is not what you would call, at least when it comes to the FCS and specifically the Southern Conference, one of the powers in the SoCon. So to me, that sends a lot of alarm bells when it comes to Auburn's 2017 season in the bigger picture. But with Missouri's defense the way it's been, I do think Jarrett Stidham can come out and Cam Petway and have a really good ball game and carry Auburn to their first conference victory of the season.
You know, despite Auburn's woes on offense, especially that offensive line, getting Jared Heisman Stidham, I'm going to call him Jared Heisman Stidham because that's what he was supposed to be. And he's not that, and he hasn't shown that. And I think Missouri's offense is really good this season, but you saw that game last week with only putting up 3 points against a Purdue team. So I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers in this one. The only time you'll ever hear me go for the Auburn Tigers because I don't think they're going to be good for the rest of the season. Let's go Florida and Kentucky real quick, James. Who do you got in this game?
I tell you what, Florida, Kentucky, for Florida, since Steve Spurrier, every now and then it's been kind of like Alabama Vanderbilt historically, where Kentucky doesn't have the talent, but can kind of be that thorn in the side. And the way Florida has struggled in the last several years on offense and struggled this season, again, only scoring their first touchdown on offense, remember, in the second half against Tennessee, and Kentucky coming off an impressive road win at South Carolina, holding the Gamecocks to 13 points. Kentucky has not won since 1986 in the series over Florida. I like that to end on Saturday. The wrong team is favored. Kentucky's going to win outright.
I actually agree with you. I think Kentucky breaks their 31 straight games Florida has beaten Kentucky, and I think they don't make it 32. I'm going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats in this one, and it's not basketball. It's not Coach Calipari. I'm really going with Kentucky. I think Kentucky is one of those other teams as well who's kind of like a sleeper team, a dark horse in this, in this conference, and I think I'm going to go with Kentucky and Lexington. I think Jim McElwain's a great coach at Florida. He's doing a great job, but I think this season's not his season, especially when they have no identity on offense. They haven't found a quarterback who can really get them over the hump. I thought Malik Zaire was going to be that quarterback, and he hasn't really shown that lately. So I'm going to go with the Kentucky Wildcats in this one. Final, the Vanderbilt Commodores versus the Alabama Crimson Tide, James. I know we got staff predictions, and we're going to post those later on, but who do you got?
Well, it's one of those that we just mentioned as far as historically, and our very own Martin Houston knows this very well from playing in the series when it was, as a lot of the fans know, a lot of the Crimson Tide family knows, that Alabama Vanderbilt used to be an every year series back in the day. And Vanderbilt was one of those that, even though they haven't won since 1984 against Alabama Crimson Tide, by the way, Marquis, a little trivia for you, that was a homecoming game that year for Alabama that they lost inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium.
It's never good to lose homecoming.
Ask Bill Curry about losing on homecoming and you'll find out. But Vanderbilt's played Alabama, especially in Nashville, some really tight ball games, even when the talent discrepancy has been way in favor of Alabama. But this is not your father's Vanderbilt squad of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There used to be, 3-4 win teams, perennial doormats in the Southeastern Conference. It's a 3-0 Vandy squad that has a top 25 win already under their belt. They'll be at home. There's going to be a lot of energy inside Vanderbilt Stadium, but they haven't seen this year and don't see too often now that Alabama's not on the schedule every year, somebody at the quarterback position that's as dynamic and that has the mobility and the big playability that Jalen Hurts does. So I can see Vanderbilt, though, sticking around with their defense for a half, 3 quarters maybe. But I just think Jalen Hurts in that offense makes some plays in the second half that pulls away from the Commodores. And I like Alabama not only to win, but to just cover that point spread.
I'm actually going to go with the Alabama Crimson Tide as well. I think defensively, Alabama will find their true identity after that come to Jesus meeting that possibly never even happened. And I think that defense is now hungry to stop this Vanderbilt offensive attack. I know Vanderbilt is also good on the defensive side of the ball, but they haven't faced an offense with Jalen Hurts, with Damian Harris, with Bo Scarborough, and all this talent surrounding Jalen Hurts and the Alabama Crimson Tide. So I'm going to go Alabama escapes Nashville with a victory. And that does it for our Week 4 predictions of the SEC. For Marquis, Munson, James Hardy, this is Tide 102.9, 100.9, the home of Alabama sports. Make sure you download that Tide 102.9 app at the Google Store. And, well, Google Play and the Apple Store. That shows you I don't have an Android. If you have an Android, I'm sorry, I have an Apple. So, App Store and Google Play. And also make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, Tide1029.com. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.